All right, buckle up, everybody, because we are going deep today. Deep into a story, that is. We're talking about the Science of Identity Foundation, SFIF for short. And some of the people who've been a part of it, we've been digging through legal documents and forum posts and, well, a whole bunch of stuff. And I got to say, some of it paints a pretty, let's just say, interesting picture of this group.
Yeah, it's more than just spiritual beliefs, that's for sure. We're going to be talking about business dealings and politics and maybe even some criminal activity, trying to figure out how it all fits together. Should be pretty fascinating.
Okay, so let's start with this guy, Patrick Bowler. He went by the name Paramahamsa Das too. Talk about a life story. He was part of SIF, but he was also get this, a convicted drug smuggler.
Yeah, and even in the U.S. indictment, where they lay out all the charges about him smuggling hashish and marijuana, it says that in prison he was always ready to help others and share in the spiritual resources. I mean, he even taught yoga and meditation in there.
Wow. So wait, he goes by the guru. He's called Top Hat. He's involved in international drug smuggling, and then he's leading meditation sessions behind bars. It's pretty wild. I mean, what do you make of that? What kind of influence did Secu have on this guy?
It's a good question. I mean, it really says something about human nature, right? How complicated it all is. And it raises questions about SIF itself and the guy who started it, Chris Butler. He was once known as Siddhaswarupananda Paramahamsa. Did you know he was a member of ISKCON before SIF? Another one of those Hare Krishna groups.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So Butler starts SIF, and they have kind of a hierarchy.
Yeah.
You've got your regular disciples, then senior disciples, and then Butler himself, the big guru at the top.
Right. And one of the biggest things they emphasize is surrender to the guru. It comes up over and over in what we've been reading. Seems to be a major part of how they operate.
But it's not all like happy, clappy. We're seeing a lot of anger from former members in these forum posts, talking about manipulation and abuse by Butler. Like this surrender thing wasn't always a good experience.
Yeah, you got to wonder if that whole surrender idea was maybe a way to control people, maybe even exploit them. Something we definitely need to think about as we go through all this.
Okay, so then we have this other guy, Alan Tibby. Acharya Das is another name he used. He's been called like the public face of SIF. Big-time businessman. Some people even say he was running a school for SIF in the Philippines, although he denies having anything to do with SIF at all.
Yeah, that's weird, right? I mean, there's definitely stuff connecting him to that school and his alias within SIF. Makes you wonder if they're trying to keep their activities on the down low.
Like trying to look all respectable on the surface, but maybe doing things they don't want people to know about. Speaking of which, there's this talk about financial links between SIF, Healthy's Inc., the company behind Down to Earth, those vegetarian grocery stores, and also this multi-level marketing company, QNet. Kind of a controversial one, that.
Oh, yeah, QNet? That's where these guys come in. Vijay Ezran and Joseph Bismark went by Japadas, big players in QNet and close to SIF. Seems like their reach goes way beyond just the spiritual stuff, into business and money and all that.
And then there's the Gabbard family. Mike, Carol, and Tulsi. All involved in politics and all connected to SIF in some way. Mike goes by Krishna Kartha Das, and Carol is Devaruti Dasi. They both held political positions in Hawaii, and of course, their daughter Tulsi, she was even in Congress.
Yeah, a lot of people have talked about Tulsi Gabbard and her connection to SIF. Some say the group influenced her political views. Makes you think about how religious organizations can have a hand in politics, right?
It's a tangled web, that's for sure. Hard to tell where one thing ends and the next one begins. Personal beliefs, business, political ambitions, and we're seeing a lot of denials, things that don't add up. Makes it hard to get a clear picture of what's really going on.
We've only just dipped our toes in here. There's also all this stuff in the forums about cover-ups within SIF and maybe even trying to influence government departments in Hawaii. Pretty serious stuff.
Yeah, we've got a lot to unpack, lots of info, and it's not always easy to tell what's real and what's, just speculation. But one thing's for sure, there's more to SIF than meets the eye.
Like peeling back layers of an onion, this is. And I think we're going to find some interesting, maybe even disturbing stuff as we keep digging. Stick with us as we go deeper into the SIF world.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? This whole idea of surrendering to a guru, giving up your own way of thinking, your independence.
Yeah, it's a powerful idea. And if all this talk about manipulation and maybe people being taken advantage of financially, it makes you wonder if that surrender was really, truly a choice.
And yeah, speaking of finances, some of the stuff we read said SIF members were encouraged to give a big chunk of their income. Like some people even say up to 25%.
Whoa, 25%, that's a lot to ask. Makes you wonder if there was pressure to donate. Maybe they made it seem like it was all about being devoted.
Oh, and this is interesting. Remember how they call people outside of SIF karmas? Well, some people say there was this belief, like if you expose these karmas to Butler's chanting or gave them prasadam, that's food offered to Krishna, it could somehow, like, influence them.
That's kind of weird, right? They thought they could affect people who weren't even part of their group. I mean, it's one thing to share your beliefs, but trying to influence someone without them knowing, kind of messed up, if you ask me.
Yeah, not cool. And there are some ethical questions about their political involvement, too. Some say SIF encouraged members to go after jobs in government, maybe to gain influence from the inside.
Now that's a serious claim. If it's true, you gotta wonder about conflicts of interest. Are these people working for the public good or pushing some hidden agenda?
Right. And it makes Mike Gabbard saying he's Catholic, even with all his SIF connections, even weirder. Was it real? Or was he trying to distance himself from something that could look bad?
Tough to say. Really shows how faith and politics and personal goals can all get mixed up together, huh?
It's like a big puzzle, all these pieces scattered around. We're trying to figure out what SIF is really all about.
Yeah.
But there are so many different stories, so many things that don't add up.
And it's important to figure it out. We're not talking about theories here. This is about real people's lives, their money, their jobs, maybe even their freedom to think for themselves. That's the scary part.
Okay, so let's see if we can connect some dots. We've got Patrick Bowler, drug smuggler, allegedly still getting financial support from SIF even after he was convicted.
Then there's SIF itself, with Chris Butler at the helm, pushing this surrender to the guru idea. But at the same time, we're hearing about possible manipulation, people losing money, maybe even some shady political stuff going on.
And then Alan Tibby, supposedly the public face of SIF, but saying he has nothing to do with them, even though we've seen evidence linking him to that school in the Philippines.
It's like every time we think we're getting a handle on something, it slips away. And then there are the alleged connections with Healthies Inc., Down to Earth, and QNet, that multi-level marketing company with a, let's say, colorful past. It's a lot, I know. Probably feeling a bit overwhelmed. Right, listener?
It's okay to feel that way. We're going deep here, really deep. Lots of information, conflicting stories, and a whole bunch of questions that need answers.
So where do we go from here? How do we even begin to make sense of all this?
I think the key is to stay curious, but also be skeptical. Look at all sides of the story, weigh the evidence, and most importantly, ask ourselves what it all means.
Right. What are the implications of all this power and influence? What does it say about the role of faith in our society?
And how can we protect ourselves from being manipulated or taken advantage of, whether it's by a spiritual leader, a business, or even a political ideology? Important questions those are.
Yeah, for sure. Because this isn't just about SIF, right? This is about understanding human nature, how power works, and why it's so important to think critically, especially when information can be twisted and used against us. It's like we're lost in the woods or something. Every path we take leads to a dead end. Yeah, and these cover-ups they talk about inside SIF, that just makes it even more complicated. Some people who used to be members, they say there were like organized efforts to shut people up, to protect their image.
And that's super concerning, right?
Yeah.
Especially with their alleged ties to law enforcement and government in Hawaii. If they were using those connections to hide things, that's a huge deal.
Absolutely. It makes you question, like, were these people in power putting SIF first instead of the public? Were they protecting a group instead of doing their jobs?
It's scary to think about, honestly. Like, how far did this influence go? We're not just talking about individuals here, but maybe systems, institutions even.
It definitely highlights the need for transparency and accountability, especially for groups that operate in these kind of murky areas. You know, spirituality, business, politics, all mixed up together.
And it shows how important critical thinking is for all of us. We can't just take things at face value, especially when it's coming from someone who might have an agenda.
Right. Got to be aware of our own biases, too, and the biases of the people giving us the information. It's easy to fall into that trap, you know, only looking for stuff that confirms what you already believe, ignoring the rest.
Like you're wearing those rose-colored glasses, right? Everything looks pretty, but you're missing the real picture. And in this case, that picture could be, well, pretty dark. Manipulation, exploitation, maybe even criminal stuff.
We've seen how spiritual beliefs can be twisted, used for the wrong reasons, how business and politics can get mixed up with religion, and how a lack of transparency, of being accountable, can allow people to abuse their power.
So here we are at the end of our deep dive into SIF and all these mysterious figures and connections. We've got more questions than answers, that's for sure. But even without clear-cut conclusions, I think we've learned some important things.
Absolutely. This whole journey, it's made us think hard about faith, power, and how they can be used. It's shown us how people can be taken advantage of, especially when they're looking for spiritual guidance, and how important it is to be skeptical, to question things, no matter what you believe.
It's a good reminder that we all have to stay informed, ask questions, and hold those in power accountable, whether it's a religious leader, a CEO, or a politician. Trusting blindly can have some pretty bad consequences.
So, listener, as you go about your day, remember what we've talked about. Keep your eyes open, question what you see and hear, consider different points of view. And don't be afraid to dig a little deeper. You never know what you might find.